So right now your partner left and you're trying to figure out, okay, how long would it take for me to get her back if I have the right strategies, if I have the right tactics? And this is a question I get a lot. And in this video, I want to show you the answers, but the answers are not going to be what you think. So first and foremost, a lot of people, because they don't know this, they come to this journey of reconciliation with the wrong expectations. And you will learn later, this will pretty much guarantee your failure. In fact, you asking the question, how long will it take, usually means that you're in the wrong mindset in the first place, and you are probably not going to get your results. And so if you want more content that cuts through a lot of the BS advice out there about marriages and relationships and gives you everything you need to either reconcile or create the relationship of your dreams, then feel free to subscribe to this channel and also click that bell button as well to be notified when I post new videos every single week. So to answer that question of how long it will take, we need to understand first what reconciliation actually looks like. And if you ask a lot of people what the journey of reconciliation actually looks like, they'll picture a line like this, where maybe in the beginning here, you join a program, you learn something, you learn some new ways of saying things, some tactics, and after you learn that thing, it'll just be like a linear progression going up. Things are just going to get better and better and better. But actually, when you look at the journey of reconciliation, and after now helping 5,000 plus clients go from very dire situations to where they are today, the journey actually looks more like this, where it's filled with a lot of valleys and dips and resistance and suspicions and doubt. And so what happens is usually when you start to change, and we talked about this in another video before, when you start to change, you're going to go through what we call the paradox of change, where your partner is actually going to become more suspicious, more doubtful of your changes. And this is actually what will cause those dips that we're picturing here. Now, the reason why these dips happen is I want you to put yourself in your partner's shoes a bit. Imagine that, you've been in this relationship for a very long time, and this person you're in a relationship with has always kind of made you very, very miserable. But every time you talk about how miserable you are to this person always makes the right kinds of promises, makes the right kinds of words and charming words to say basically, hey, it's okay, you can trust me, you can trust that I will change and things will get better in the future. But after some time, after 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times of believing this and then getting disappointed each time, you finally gain the courage to say, you know what, screw this. I don't believe this person anymore. I want to leave this relationship. And so when your partner is at the point where she wants to leave the relationship, she's actually at this point where she's been fooled so many times by your false promises that she will not find herself able to believe you anymore. So I want you to imagine that you are in this position now where you cannot trust or believe your partner anymore. And your partner right now is starting to change and do things differently and saying things differently. Would you be suspicious? Would you be doubtful of their changes? Of course you would. Your partner is going to face the same thing. So when you face these dips, that is simply when your partner is feeling very suspicious and doubtful of your changes, which she naturally would. And if you look at a lot of my clients' journeys too, a lot of them don't actually know how many dips will happen before that set of reconciliation is achieved. So a lot of people, for example, they might think like this is the last dip, but after you get through this dip, you might have to face another dip and another dip. And this journey, if you listen closely to any of my client stories, this happened to exactly all of them. It happened to me as well, and this will happen to you as well, guaranteed. So again, back to the main question, how long does it actually take to reconcile? And there's really not a hard and fast answer to that, but I'm going to give you 5 factors here that will determine whether this will be a quick journey for you or a very, very slow journey for you, or even reconciliation will happen in the first place. And the first factor here to think about is how badly the 5 pillars were broken. Basically, the main question is how much negative confirmation bias did you create in the first place? So, the reason why this happens should be quite obvious. If you have broken the 5 pillars and you've created a lot more negative confirmation bias, you should expect this journey to be a lot longer, and you should expect the dips to be a lot deeper as well. And you would actually do the same things here too. If you were to reverse the roles again and you have now developed a very negative confirmation bias about your partner, and your partner suddenly changing now and doing things for the better, you're going to be more suspicious the more negative confirmation bias you have. For a lot of my clients, this negative confirmation bias takes about 6 months to 12 months to get over. For some of my kind of outlier clients, it might take even 1.5 years, 2 years, 2.5 years. For me personally, it took me about 3.5 years to break through this negative confirmation bias because, again, I didn't have anyone helping me or mentors helping me. I was kind of just trying to figure out myself. But again, how much negative confirmation bias you create will determine how long this journey will take. And the second factor is really not what you do during the high points, but what you do during these dips, during this very tough test. So to understand this one, imagine, again, reversing the roles again. Again, you have a really hard time now trusting your partner, trusting her promises, because she has promised so many times before, but she's always betrayed that promise of being better, of changing, etc. And so now she's saying again, I'm going to change, I'm going to do better, etc. So you watch her. And when you express your doubt to her, when you express that, I don't really believe that you can change, I don't really believe that there will be change, basically when this dip happens, your partner suddenly starts to respond in very toxic ways. Maybe she gets angry at you for even saying that. Maybe she feels really hopeless now and gets all demotivated and doesn't want to change anymore. Or maybe she starts to play some manipulative games, some passive games of trying to walk away and mean it, hoping that her walking away will somehow reverse psychology you into coming back. If you express your true feelings and she responds in that way, basically when the dip happens and she responds in negative ways, what would you think? I would think, for me, I would think, you know what? Maybe I was right to change. Maybe I don't really believe the changes are real. Maybe they're only changing to have me back, but they're not really changing permanently for real in genuine ways. And this is exactly what happens when you get these dips. And when you get these dips, it can happen in a lot of forms. It can happen in your partner resisting you in an active form, in your partner telling you that it's hopeless, that she feels hopeless, that there's no chance of reconciliation. It can happen in so many ways, but when this dip happens and you crumble during this dip, you cannot thrive through this dip. That will tell your partner everything she needs to know. And so this is again why, if you haven't really built up your bulletproof vest, if your bulletproof vest is still in a fragile state or at most even in a robust state, but it's not in a thriving state that we always talk about, then you will have no hope during these dips. You will give up. You will crumble during these dips, no matter how much willpower you try to exert to thrive during these dips. If you're not thriving internally, forget it. Which is why we tell a lot of our clients, for example, you have to master your internal shifts to the point where you can get yourself to that thriving state. Because if you cannot get to the thriving state, you will never pass these dips. And the third factor is really how genuine and effortless your thriving performance seems to your partner during, again, these dips. Not during the high points, during the dips. I want you to imagine, again, reversing the roles again. And now you're seeing your partner changing, finally, and they're doing different things. But when they're doing these new actions and these new changes, you can tell that they're not really enjoying it, that it's not effortless for them, that it feels like work, it feels like a chore, it feels like an obligation to them, that, doing the right things seems so difficult for them every single day. Can you actually trust that the changes will be permanent, will be for real? Of course not, because you're going to be thinking, if you hate these changes so much, if these changes are so hard for you, then how permanent can they be? How long can you actually do it? And so you're going to think to yourself, I need more data. I need more evidence. I need more evidence before I can jump in with both feet and say, I trust that the changes are real. And so when you are changing, when you're showing your changes, when you're showing your different ways of talking and doing things, but you haven't really made it a deep part of you, a deep part of your identity to the point where you can do it effortlessly. Like if you still find it hard to be bulletproof, for example, if you find it hard to plan the frameworks, for example, yes, you're doing the right thing, but you're doing the right thing with the wrong how, and this whole journey will be a lot longer than you expected. In fact, if you never get to the point where you can effortlessly do the right processes, you might never actually get to the point of reconciliation because your partner is always going to be needing more and more and more and more data. And the fourth factor is really how consistent your performance is, again, during these dips. If you can be consistent, this process of reconciliation will be very fast, but if you cannot be consistent, it'll be very slow. And to understand this, again, imagine again that right now that you are a coach for, let's say, a basketball team, and you have this player who used to be a really, really bad player, but, over the summer, he says he's been making a lot of changes and making a lot of improvements to his game. So you put him in the game, and some days he's great, he's awesome some days, but some days he's just very bad, very terrible. So he's very unreliable in this case. Can you fully trust in this player? I don't think so. The same way, if some days you can do the right things effortlessly and consistently and genuinely, but then other days you just kind of woke up on the wrong side of the bed and you are grumpy and so on, can your partner actually trust your changes? Well, the same way you cannot trust that player, she cannot trust you as well. So again, if you're someone who has been betrayed so many times, burned so many times, that every time you trust this person, you get disappointed, you get burned basically, will inconsistent performance be enough data for you to go, let me just jump with both feet in now? Of course not. You're going to need more data. And if you need more data, that means that you need to see more performances during these dips, which means that you're going to create more dips, more tests, before you can finally get to the reconciliation stage. So again, why we say, if you cannot be consistent, you will actually create yourself more of these dips before you get to reconciliation. And this is also why we stress principles like the performance mindset. Why we tell our clients, for example, you cannot just master something until you can get it right sometimes. You have to master it until you cannot get it wrong anymore. And number 5 is really about how quickly you can allow your partner to fall back in love with you, to fall back into trust, etc. And to understand this point, we need to understand the difference between falling outcomes and striving outcomes. So in life, you get 2 outcomes. When you think about striving outcomes, you think about, for example, lifting weights or running, right? With lifting weights, the more willpower you exert to lifting that weight, the more weight you can lift. So it's a direct one-to-one correlation between willpower and results. But with falling outcomes, it's the opposite. Think of falling asleep, for example. Think of falling to rest. The more you try, the more willpower you exert to falling asleep, the less you can fall asleep. I mean, try it tonight if you want to. Now, they call it falling in love for a reason, because love is very much a falling outcome, a falling action. So I want you to imagine here that you're trying to fall asleep right now, but you see your partner hovering over your bed, basically, essentially pressuring you to fall asleep. And when she sees that you're not falling asleep, she kind of questions you to go, okay, why are you not falling asleep? What's so hard about falling asleep? And she kind of makes you feel guilty for not falling asleep, adding more pressure, etc. What a lot of men do when they try to reconcile is that they're inadvertently, unconsciously adding that pressure. They're basically hovering over their partner to reconcile. And this pressure that you're adding, this sense of guilt that you're adding to that process of reconciliation, you trying to speed up that process of reconciliation is actually going to make you go further away from reconciliation than you think. And this is actually a big reason why the clients or the people who ask, how long does it take to reconcile, don't actually end up reconciling. Because when you ask the question, how long does it take to reconcile? It means that your brain and your paradigms and your sole reason for wanting to reconcile is to reconcile quickly, to reconcile fast. And when you have this mindset, you are naturally going to add that pressure, that guilt, without you even trying to add that guilt. Even if you're trying to not add that guilt, you will do it because you're basically naturally going to hover over your partner and naturally add that pressure anyway, which prevents falling. And this brings me to the 4 key mistakes that I see a lot. And not only just my clients, but if I look at my YouTube audience too, these are the 4 mistakes that I see a lot of you guys making. Number 1 is, again, accidentally using the striving approach to approach this problem. And the word accidentally is the key here because I don't think a lot of you guys are doing it purposefully. But again, you cannot help but use a striving approach and prevent falling. So in the previous video, where we talk about how emotions form and how to be bulletproof, we talked about this chart where it starts with your paradigms. Your paradigms lead to the way you interpret the world. Your interpretations lead to your emotions, which leads to actions, which leads to outcomes. And you're going to pass through the outcomes and react to the outcomes using the same paradigms, etc. And so let's start here. If you're asking the question again, how long will this take? It shows everyone, including yourself, that you are right now doing to have, not doing because you are. You're doing because you want to expect some having, which is why you ask, how long will this take in the first place? So when you go through these dips, and when you realize that the reconciliation is not really happening as quickly as you want it to go, and maybe you might be even feeling like you're getting further away from the outcome of reconciliation during these dips. If you have that paradigm of doing to have and your having is going away, you're naturally going to interpret that lack of having or going away from the having as a bad thing. A lot of people, for example, say, you know what, her resistance, whatever she's saying right now is really inconvenient. What's the point of all this? They're going to say to themselves, like, I'm so tired, I'm so exhausted, I've done so much. How much more does she want? How much more will this take? And then you're going to think, for example, like, geez, partner, like, how much more do you need for you to even like try to make this relationship work? You're going to have all these voices that run through your head, basically negative interpretations that will color into your negative emotions. And when you are trying to act out of these negative emotions, your actions, the likelihood that your actions will be negative is also going to be higher. So the likelihood that your actions are going to be negative during the dips are going to be very, very high. And even if you try to hide these negative actions, let's say you willpower and bro your way into doing the right things anyway, despite all these negative feelings and interpretations you're having, those negative feelings will show through your micro expressions, will show through your microtones, and you won't be able to hide it, even if you think you're doing a good job of hiding it. And so if you look back at the 5 factors that we talk about, you're naturally going to start failing in a lot of these ways. You're not going to be as consistent. Your changes are not going to be as effortless. You're not going to be thriving during those dips, for example. So you're going to be making a lot of these mistakes that will actually put you further away from reconciliation than you are thinking. And so when you fail during these dips, you will actually lengthen this whole chart, this whole process. But for most people, though, if they're not just going to lengthen it, they're actually going to make reconciliation quite impossible. Because what happens again is when they fail these dips and their partner finally pulls further away, they're going to use the same paradigm of doing to have to react, to reflect on their partner going further away. And so if they use the same paradigm, they will interpret that more negatively, which will make them feel more negatively, which will make them act more negatively, which will cause their partner to pull away even further. And so now they're secretly sabotaging their relationship. They're secretly pushing their partner away and making reconciliation impossible. And when reconciliation becomes impossible, they say to themselves, I knew it was impossible, but it wasn't actually impossible to begin with. It was impossible because you made it impossible. And you made it impossible because of these negative paradigms that you had to begin with. Do you see the funny self-fulfilling prophecy that happens here, guys? And the second most common mistake is skipping the internal shifts. A lot of you guys just want to learn all these external tactics of what to do, what to say, but you don't really want to take some time to learn the internal shifts. And the internal shifts here include things like getting rid of the victim mindset, becoming untethered, or building your thriving bulletproof vest, as we call it. And the same way as being tethered screwed you over in the first example that we showed, if you, let's say, have the victim mindset, if you're not bulletproof, for example, during the dips, when your partner, let's say, makes it hopeless for you, makes it difficult for you, resists you, it gives you some tough truths, you're not going to be able to interpret that event in a positive way with those negative paradigms. And so with those negative paradigms, if you play the victim, for example, and your partner makes it hopeless for you, you're going to interpret that in a victim way. You're going to feel like a victim. You're going to feel hopeless, for example. You're going to feel angry at your partner, which will increase the likelihood that you're going to do angry things and hopeless things and bad things and toxic ways, which will actually push your partner further away. And again, this repeats back again because when your partner finally pulls further away because of what you did, you're going to now filter that through your victim mindset again and repeat and repeat. And you get the same self-fulfilling prophecy that some people I see have fallen into. And mistake number 3 is not making your changes as part of your identity. So to understand the role of identity here, identity shifting, I want you to imagine that you're standing in front of 2 smokers right now. And, you being kind of a a-hole, you just give each one a cigarette and you say, hey, do you want a cigarette? The first person says, hey, no thanks, I am a smoker, but I'm trying to quit. And the second person says, well, I am not a smoker anymore. So the first person is trying to do, but that doing hasn't become his identity yet. The second person is doing, but that doing has become a deep part of his identity now. Who is going to have a higher likelihood of quitting? Usually the second guy who have made it part of his identity. And the problem with a lot of people who are trying to get rid of addictions or trying to change their lifestyle, like losing weight, for example, is, if you look at people who yo-yo diet, and they're the people who are trying to lose weight, but they haven't made the lifestyle of losing weight, of being fit into their identity. While the people who don't yo-yo diet, who lose the weight and keep it off, are the people who has made it part of their identity. And making it part of your identity is crucial again because it's going to make you very, very consistent. But not only is it going to make it consistent, whatever you do consistent, but it's consistent because you actually enjoy the process of doing it. You actually make it a lifestyle because you can see yourself doing it forever, which again helps you serve many of the 5 factors that we talked about earlier. But if you haven't made it part of your identity yet, what happens is when you start to sense during these dips that you're having is pulling further away from you because you don't actually enjoy the process. You don't actually enjoy being in your changes. enjoy the whole journey in itself. When you sense that having going away from you, this destination going away from you, you're naturally going to default back into your striving approach, because again, you want the outcome to come fast, because the faster the outcome comes, the sooner you can stop doing the process that you don't actually enjoy. But the funny part again, guys, is the faster you want the outcome to come to you because you don't enjoy it, the longer it will actually take to come to you. In fact, if you want it fast, you may actually never end up getting it. Do you see the funny irony again here, guys? And the fourth mistake again is not operating and mastering the skills that you're learning like a performer. So a lot of people, even when I teach, for example, the internal shifts, or when I teach what we call the TTH scripts or the frameworks, a lot of people, a lot of my clients even, they only practice it until they can get it right. So basically, they're practicing a script or a framework, and then they say, okay, let me come out with this version, and with this version, the coaches say it's good. Once, I'm good. If I can shoot the ball and put it in the hole in the hoop once, I'm good. So they're mastering until they can get it right, but they're not mastering something until they cannot get it wrong anymore. And that's the key difference between amateurs and real performers. Now, again, the thing is that because your performance, what your partner is really watching for are what you do during these dips, and not just one dip, but many dips. You need to be very consistent across those dips. And if you have only mastered something until you can get it right sometimes, you will get it right sometimes for sure, but you will get it wrong a lot of times. And just what we talked about in the beginning, if you cannot be consistent, you will actually prolong this process, and you might not even get the reconciliation that you want if you cannot be consistent in the first place. So the only way around this is if you learn to master something until you cannot get it wrong anymore. And a massive part of being a performer, guys, is practicing and mastering something until you cannot get it wrong before the need to perform even arises. The big issue that I see with a lot of people's approaches is that they wait until things are very dire, when the problem is staring them right in the freaking face, before they're willing to practice and learn the skills and so on. So you can imagine like you're a boxer, for example, right? And right now you have no fights planned. You haven't gotten a call from your agent yet. And you're basically saying, you know what? Now, since I don't have any fight scheduled, I'm just going to be relaxing and just kind of sitting on the couch eating potato chips and stuff like that. I'm not going to go to the workout. I'm not going to go to practice, whatever it is. Then you get a call from your agent one day and says, hey, you have a fight in 2 weeks. And then once you have that fight scheduled, now you'll start to go practice and become a performer. Well, if you're waiting for you to get that phone call before you actually become a performer, it's too late. The fight is in 2 weeks. It's the same thing here. If you're waiting for something bad to happen before you're willing to actually do the process, you're always going to be way too late. And this is why, if you look at the way the program is structured, it's structured in that way, because we first teach you how to learn, the basics of how to learn. Because if you don't know how to learn, you cannot learn the rest of the stuff. But once you learn how to learn, we teach you the victim mindsets, or how to get rid of them. And once we teach you how to get rid of the victim mindsets, we teach you how to untether and your bulletproof vest. And so it starts with a lot of layers of internal shifts before we even get to the frameworks, which is way down the line. And for a lot of my clients, like Elisa, for example, she spent probably 9 months in just the internal shift portion alone before even touching the frameworks part, the tactics of what to do and what to say. Because again, the what to do and what to say is not the secret to getting your results, because you need to learn how to do what to say and do the right things very consistently, very effortlessly, in a falling way. There's a lot of other criteria and factors that you need to get right beyond just doing and saying things in a correct way. And this is also why when you look at a lot of my client stories, for example, we hold them to very, very high standards. You'll often hear them talk about the tough love that we give. And it's because, we want you to become masters, to become performers at this, to make this a deep part of your identity that you cannot get it wrong anymore. So not only do you need to do the right things and say the right things in a world-class way, but you need to be world-class in a very consistent way, day in, day out. And you need to be able to be someone who can replicate great results day in and day out every single day for the rest of your life if you want to get the results of reconciliation. And your skills especially needs to be on point during the toughest moments, during these dips. So your skills, if you think about it, needs to be created and designed under pressure. It needs to be like a diamond. And this is why, again, when you look at the program curriculum, it stresses the daily practice processes. It stresses you doing work in the daily drills, in the daily practices to make it a deep part of who you are as a performer, as an identity level. Sometimes I get comments from people who are saying basically, what's the difference between what you get from your YouTube channel, Jeff, versus the program? Or what's the difference between your program and other people's programs? And it's really this. I think if you rely on just YouTube videos, for example, you can get what we call conceptual mastery. You can understand conceptually what we're talking about. It will be very hard for you to become a performer to have what we call experiential mastery. So it's almost like, again, if you're trying to be a basketball player, you can watch games and videos about basketball all you want and read books about basketball all you want, but you're not going to become a great performer at basketball no matter how many hours you spend reading. To become great at basketball as a performer, you need to actually play and do the daily practice process and the right daily practice processes as well. So basically here, everything that we do is designed to allow you to excel in all the 5 factors that we talked about, to basically speed up your results and your progress to reconciliation, to essentially guarantee it. If you have made this a deep part of your identity and you can allow your partner to fall back in love with your falling processes, your results are pretty much guaranteed. And if you don't believe me here, I want you to take a look at any and all of my client stories, because once you can do this, you'll be very, very hard to resist. So again, back to the main question. How long does it take to get her back? It depends again on how quickly you can master the right principles, the right processes, and make it a deep part of your identity so that you can serve these 5 factors that we talk about. The better you can serve these 5 factors, the quicker this timeline will be. The less you master these 5 factors, the longer this timeline will be if you can get the reconciliation at all. And guys, if you want, again, a program that teaches you how to serve these 5 factors the best way possible, feel free to join my masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. In the masterclass, I'll show you the exact steps and principles and processes all my clients follow to get them from the deepest of lows to where they are today. So if you want to join me in the masterclass, click the link above my head or also down below this video. And at the end of the masterclass, guys, if you want to apply for the Relationships Revival program, you can do that as well. But for now, I hope that was helpful for you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.